So how is everyone? Are we good? We're here. I'm moving. I'm still 6 feet away. But I don't like to be miles away. Is there anyone here that's not good? Put your hand up if you're not good. Are we all good? That's wonderful. Okay. What do we think about the book, Tozer? Yeah. What is it that we like about the book?
He thinks outside the box in ways.
Sorry?
He thinks outside the box, so he really gets down into some good descriptions about God.
Yeah. He was born in the 19th century. You know, when people used to read books. And people used to think deeply about things. And I think you can see a difference in the subject matter, the way he writes about it. I read some of his books years ago when I first became a Christian, and I felt like I needed to know as much as I could find out about the Bible and God and everything else. I'm just putting this in. Anyway, I have 2 chapters. Omnipresence and Immanence, big words that basically he explores, in both of those chapters, he explores the problem of our feeling remote from God, or our feeling that God is far off or not here with me. Okay, he obviously struggled with this. I'm just going to be honest. It's obvious to me why he struggled with it, because he's not a baptized Christian. He belongs to denominationalism. So he believed that, you know, you just were saved by faith. Now, if you are saved by faith, there's only one way to get the Holy Spirit, and that's through baptism. And if you don't have the Holy Spirit, then you don't have the Spirit to teach you. And it was really interesting to me, and it was kind of encouraging and convicting, because I read Tozer probably 25 years ago. And 25 years ago, I had a very different outlook and perspective on being a Christian. Now, I didn't realise that until I read this again. And I saw it. It was like black and white to me. But I didn't see it 25 years ago. 25 years ago, I thought, wow, this guy, you know, he's deep, there's meat here, but what I saw this time was there was a yearning for God inside of him that had not been fulfilled. And that came across to me so strongly. He calls this, I don't know if you've read the chapters, but he uses this phrase, the manifest presence of God. And his argument is basically that if we just believe that God is here, okay, just wipe that a minute. His premise, okay, his whole premise in those 2 chapters is that God is everywhere. Okay, God is absolutely everywhere all the time. He has no borders, no size, nothing. Now that's hard for us to get our head around, because we're of the flesh and we're human beings, and it's just difficult for us to think of God being everywhere all the time. That's the fact of the matter. And then within that, he addresses something called the conscious manifestation of God. That basically means, do I as an individual feel that God is here with me all the time, constantly? Or does God move away from me at certain times in my life? Or do I feel like God is distant from me? Even though I know, by fact, I know that God is everywhere, and I believe God is everywhere all the time. How do I feel? And that's basically the problem. And he basically says, if we just go through life accepting that God is everywhere without actually doing anything about it, then to him that's unacceptable. So he is trying to get closer to God so he can feel God with him all the time. Now, how do we feel about that? Do we feel as Christians that sometimes God is further away from us than at other times? Do we live a life sometimes with him being afar off, is what he calls it? Or maybe just here, or maybe just over there, or maybe, I don't know, somewhere else, but not right here inside of me. Are there times in our life when we feel that?
Sure.
Yeah.
But it isn't God who moves, it's us. We feel that inside, but it isn't really, he doesn't really move away from us. We choose to move away.
Okay.
Not consciously, kind of unconsciously. Maybe because of some of the choices we make, and so we don't want to think about him being right there. We want to think about him being down the street someplace where he can't see us.
Okay. How do we feel about that? I mean, does anyone else agree with that?
Yeah, we distance ourselves from him. He doesn't distance himself from us.
Okay.
We lose our relationship because we're not, for example, maybe not praying or not in the Word.
Okay. So have every one of us here felt at some time in our lives that God is further away from us? Or not? Put your hand up if you have, if you do feel that. Put your hand up if you have never felt that. That's interesting. That's interesting.
I'm like that. I never felt like God wasn't always with me, but of course I had felt further away from God. That I had taken myself away from him. You know, and it's not been that God took himself away from me.
Yeah. But are we, okay.
I think it's not, I haven't felt that I'm taking myself away. I feel like I can't find his face. You know, I can't, I mean, it's like he's right there, but I don't see him. It's like I'm the blind one. I'm the one that can't, you know, feel him, even though I know he's there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I'm not talking about an emotion when we say feel. I'm talking about a sense. Okay. Now there's a difference between me saying, I know he's there. I know he's there because my faith allows me to know he's there all the time. But do I sense him there all the time? Do you understand? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? This is what Tozer is kind of dealing with. And what's difficult, and we have to remember this, is he's not where we are. okay? Now, you might agree with me or you might not agree with me, and that's fine, but he's not. He's not where we are.
Talking about God or the man.
Tozer, the man. But I think what he says applies very much to us. I think, I know in times in my life, especially when things have been difficult, because we don't like it when things are difficult, I've felt that God is further away from me than when God, even though I know He's not, I've sensed it when my life is difficult, or when I'm deeply moved by something, or troubled by something, or distressed about something. I've felt that God has been further away. Now, when life is good, it's great. I feel God is right here. And I think that's probably it's a human tendency for us to see God as being close to us when things are good and further away from us when things in our life are not good. But the question is, do we, and this is the question Tozer obviously grapples with, do we accept a relationship with God that's kind of distant? Can we get used to it and think it's okay and justify it? Or is there, behind all of that, is there a yearning inside of us for a closer relationship with God that's always fighting against that? Is there a yearning to be at one with God within us? And that's basically, he's basically struggling with that. And I struggle with that. I've struggled with that in my life. You know? Oh, sorry. There are times when, you know, in a worship service, for example, you know, we're coming into the presence of God, we're singing, and I close my eyes, and I feel God. Feel. It's not a feeling. It's. I know He's there. It's a connection. It's engaging. Is probably the best way of putting it. And then there's times in my life when I know I've been doing things that do not please God. Now, this was when I was younger. And I could easily justify. We all can. Easily justify the way I was living my life, or the things I was doing, and the choices I was making. And I could justify that my relationship with God was fine. I was going to church, I was going to Bible study, doing this, doing that. It was okay. But as I've got older, I've realised it doesn't matter what I think. It matters nothing what I think. It only matters what God says. And, you know, it's hard when you're young. It's difficult when you're young to realise that. It's something that comes as you get older. You know, hopefully, as we've got older, we've drawn closer to God. And we've realised these things. And there is a yearning to be closer to God. But I want us to remember a couple of things. If I said to you, if Christ came back right now, or in an hour's time, do I 100% know that I am chosen and I'm going to heaven? 100%. I mean, there is no doubt. Do I believe it? And do I know it? Because there's a difference between believing it and knowing it. Do we? Or is there maybe 1% doubt? Is it clear? It's a question. Can anyone put a hand up? I love the older generation. I mean, this lady sitting here. Oh, yeah.
I do not memory is bad.
No. I'll tell you what it is, and I'm not going to digress, but I'll tell you what it is. The older generation, which is most of you, because there's some younger people here, the older generation were taught extremely well in the Bible. They knew it, well, they know it. And it's the older generation that are the backbone of the church. They are here. We are here. But the problem is with the younger generations. And I think it's something we have to be very careful of. We don't live as an island. I don't go to heaven without you. We're part of the body, and that's how God made it. So the finger isn't going anywhere without the hand. And the hand isn't going anywhere without the leg. And the leg's not going anywhere without the toes. And that's how God designed it. He designed it like that for a reason. Because he doesn't want us focusing on me, myself, and I. He wants us focusing on each other. So each generation has a responsibility to hold that light for the younger generations. And it's each generation's responsibility, regardless of what they are doing. They need the light. And if I'm here in the, I don't know, the 50s, I've got people behind me who are in their 40s, 30s, 20s, who are looking at me. Now, you probably are not aware that they're looking at you, but they are looking at you. They notice when you are not there. Everyone in this room right now knows exactly about how many people are here. We also know who's not here. Okay? So we are very aware of who's here, who's present, and who is not present. Just like everyone else. So the fact there's not many young people here is a concern. Okay, it's a concern because we're here, you're here. It doesn't mean we don't stop doing what we do, but it means we try to reach out to those coming up behind us. Because we can't go to heaven without them. And that's our motivation. So I hold that light for you. I walk in the light for you. I keep myself faithful for you so that we can all go together. I don't have fellowship with God without having fellowship with you. And that you just have to read 1 John to see that. Now 1 John tells us if we walk in the light as he is in the light, he forgives and cleanses us from all sin. What's important, and this is extremely important for anyone who doubts they may not be going to heaven, okay, you don't go in and out the light. Okay, it's impossible to go in and out of the light. Often you hear people say, oh, well, I can't be in fellowship with God because I've got sin in my life. And that's what causes doubt. But that's not what God is saying. God says, if you're in the light, and it doesn't mean that you're perfect, because he already talks about the sin. It means that he is constantly, every day, 24/7, every second of the day, cleansing that sin. Now there's two words used. One is forgive and one is cleanse. Forgive means he wipes it away. But cleanse means he gets rid of the stain of the sin. He uses two different words for the reason, and he says all sin, all sin. All sin in the past, all sin in the future, all sin all the time, whether you're asleep, whether you're awake, whether you're on your deathbed, whatever, all sin. And that's a continual thing that is going on all the time. And that's why we're in fellowship with him. And that's why we are in fellowship with one another. Because when God looks at me, he doesn't see me. He sees Christ, who's standing right in front of me. Doesn't even see me. He sees Christ. When he sees you, he sees Christ. What pulls us together, what binds us, what unites us, is God in you and God in me. Because he's the same God in you as he is in me. That's why you're sitting here listening. Because we all have the same God inside of us. And it's not a human thing. It's a divine thing. It's of the spiritual world. And it's what's really going on. And so we can say, it's okay. I'm okay. Doesn't matter what's going on in the world, I'm okay. And if someone's not okay, I turn around and I help them. We help each other. So when my sister slips, I don't keep marching on because I'm near the end of the race, okay? I turn to my sister and I help her to get back up because I'm not going to get to the finish line without you. Okay, so I help her get up. My other sister over here has her backpack is full of burdens. She's got too many at the moment. She's overwhelmed. I take some of them off her to lighten the load, put them in mine, because I'm okay at the moment, so that she can walk and she can make it to the finishing line. Okay? That's who we are. That's what we're about. Forget everything else. Everything else that distracts. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. There's only one thing that matters, is that we get to the finishing line. And one thing I've noticed as I've got older, and I'm feeling my age because it's my birthday soon, I'm feeling old. One thing I've noticed is life gets harder. It gets harder. It gets harder for a number of reasons. The closer I get to the finishing line, the harder it is to make it there. Now, whether that's Satan just throwing more at me because he knows I'm nearly there, I don't know. I don't know. And it really doesn't matter. But it gets harder because we see more, we experience more, and we see more discouraging things, and we see more things that, you know, can just unravel us. And we think, what in the world is going on? And we get discouraged. And that's probably the biggest problem with getting older is getting discouraged or losing heart. And that's where we need each other. That's where we need each other. So that we make it to the finishing line together. But we also help those behind us, no matter what kind of mess they're in. Because we know that when you are younger, when you're not thinking straight. Anyone younger here? My daughter's here. When I say you're not thinking straight, I mean you don't have the perspective on life and on spiritual life and on God and everything else that someone who is up here does. You just don't. You can't possibly have, because you haven't been through it. You haven't been through the fire. Have we been through the fire? Yes, we've been through the fire. We've probably been through the fire a number of times, and we've come out the other end. That is incredibly strengthening, because we came through it. When you're young and you haven't been through the fire, you have no clue what is coming your way. No clue. But we know it's coming. We know it's coming. And we know that we can come through it. The biggest problem that I see is this generation here has had a different life to the one we have today. The church is a very different place today than it was when some of you were younger. Very different. Even I can remember, 40 years ago. And so it's harder. It's harder. So we have to reach out. We have to turn up. Whether we want to or not. We're not doing it for ourselves. We're doing it for anyone that might be looking. And there's always someone looking. There's always someone aware that you're not there, that the seat is empty. And that's discouraging, isn't it? That discourages.
I'm sorry, I said no, it's not discouraging, it's helpful, because if somebody knows you're missing, then they're gonna pray for you, come see about you, or something like that.
Yeah. But if you're talking about a church of 500 and there's only 100 present, that's discouraging. It is. I mean, if we're honest, because where's everyone else? And we're connected. We are connected together. And it's the connection that God has connected us together. It's a bit like, I was going to draw, but I won't, because if I go over there, it'll just become a mess. It's like, how they used to do the atom? And they used to do a circle and a line, and a circle and a line. Yeah? That's what we are. And that's something I particularly have become very, very aware of as I've got older. And having travelled, you go into a church where you don't know any of these people, and you have an instant bond. And I know there's other people here that know that. That's not an accident. That's not a coincidence. That is God. I go to India and they're doing exactly the same that we're doing here. Why? They've never been here. I've never been to India. Because of God. And if we know this, first of all, we need to live it. Second of all, we need to pass it on to those coming up behind us so they can see the light. Now, God is in control. Everything that happens, everything, because God is everywhere, and it is Him through whom we live. And He is in total control. But remember, Satan is the prince of this world. So don't ever be surprised about anything going on in the world. Let them do it. Let it go. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. All that matters is me making it to the end and taking my sisters and brothers with me and helping those who are younger. Having patience. One thing I have learned, and I'm not good at, is patience. It requires patience with younger people. And so never give up. Never, ever give up on the younger generations, because you don't know. And if you're here and you are a younger person, and there's only one of you, or there's only two of you, then be strong. Because you are the one in your generation that God will use. He may not be using you now, but He will use you. He will, trust me, He will use you. So stay faithful. I want to read something. I have no clue what time it is. Oh, I'm good. Okay. This is the view I want us to have of God. And I want you to listen to how God, because we are Israel, remember, we're God's chosen people, listen to the language that's used. When Israel was a child, I loved him. And out of Egypt, I called my son. The more I called them, the more they went from me. Yet it was I who taught Ephraim to walk. I took them up in my arms, but they did not know that I healed them. I led them with cords of compassion, with the bands of love, and I became to them as one who eases the yoke on their jaws, and I bent down to them and fed them. Can you imagine? I bent down to them and fed them. This is God. This is God. He teaches us. When we were children, when we were young in the faith, He loved us. Okay. Even though they went from Him, even though they sacrificed, even though they did those things. By the way, it's Hosea 11. He stuck with them. I taught them to walk. Why is it important to be taught how to walk? Do we need to be taught to walk, or is it just natural? Anyone?
Well, I assume that means taught to walk in the Lord.
Yeah. We need to be taught. We need to be taught to walk. And I took them up in my arms. This is when they had gone off. I took them up in my arms, but they did not know that it was I, that it was God. It was the Almighty Jehovah who healed them. Oh, I just got better. Oh, the doctor gave me a pill. They didn't know it was God. They didn't know it was God who taught them to walk. And I led them with cords of compassion and with the bands of love. I became to them as one who eases the yoke. He eases the yoke. And I bent down to them and I fed them. That's the God that Tozer struggled to find. That's the God that we know. That's the God who allows things to happen in the world. Because he's the God who sees time from the beginning to the end in 1 second like that. We can't. We can't see the big picture. We don't know what he's doing because we're flesh. But we have God in us. And God in us allows us to catch a glimpse of what God is doing. And to know what we are about and know what we should be doing. Doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. This is me and this is the plate that God has given me. And my responsibility is to do what's on my plate. To keep my eyes on God and to walk and to hold the light. To stay faithful. And that is very difficult to do for 80 years or 90 years. But we have to do it. We have to do it because there are people behind us needing us, relying on us to hold that light bright. Because if it goes out or it goes dim and flickers, what does that do for those coming behind? They can barely see their way forward. So, we're here. We're here. And don't ever forget that it's not about this world that we're living in. Nothing is about this world we're living in. And no matter how difficult things are, no matter how confused everything becomes, we stay focused on God. I want to finish with one scripture and then I'm done. O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. He knows our thoughts. From the day I was born to the day I die. He knows every single thought that's gone through my head and your head and everyone else's head. Thou searchest out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it altogether. Thou hast beset me behind and before. You lay thy hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it. Where shall I go from thy spirit? Where shall I flee from thy presence? If I go to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there thy hand shall lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. If I say, let only darkness cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to thee. The night is bright as the day, for darkness is as light with thee. For thou did form me in my inward parts. You did knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise thee, for thou art fearful and wonderful. Thou knowest me right well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately wrought in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance, and in your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. Wow. And that is our God. And even though his thoughts are too high, we trust, we have faith, and we stand firm. Thank you.